Hi, I'm Father Eric Sundrup, and I'm here with Father Patrick Gilger at American Media, and this is another episode of Jesuit Autocomplete. If you're eating while watching this, don't get the crumbs in the keyboard. It's very hard to get out.
Do you have experience with this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this episode, we have Do Catholics.
Anything could come after this.
There's literally anything that could come after this. Oh boy. Do Catholics read the Bible? Yes. Next question.
Certainly. Yeah.
No, we've had this before.
There had been a long tradition, in fact, of Catholics reading the Bible significantly less than our Protestant brothers and sisters. But we, in fact, do read the Bible a lot and read the Scriptures a lot. One of the things that I think is actually a kind of a beautiful answer to this that gets into the history of a little bit is that part of the reason Catholics didn't read the Bible so much historically is because people didn't read, right? That was a new skill.
Do Catholics read?
And so instead of reading, what we would do is listen to it. And that's where the liturgy of the word partially comes from, is you'd have the person who could read speak and proclaim the Scriptures for everyone so that we would listen together.
After Vatican II, there was also sort of a revamp of what we call the lectionaries, right? That's the selection of readings that you hear at Sunday Masses and also what you hear at the daily Masses. And a lot of effort went into making sure we hit all the different parts, both of the Hebrew Scriptures and the Old Testament and the New Testament. So there's been a lot of that. So that's really important to be reading the Bible. Do Catholics worship Mary? No. I mean, this goes back to the communion of saints, the importance of models of faith for us. So you'll see statues of Mary and Joseph in a lot of Catholic churches. You'll see statues of a lot of saints in a lot of Catholic churches. Are we worshiping them as God? Absolutely not. There is one God, right?
Yeah. I think it's an understandable question for a lot of people who don't talk to Catholics, because they may come into a Catholic church or see something on TV, right, where you see all of these statues of Mary. And look, there are a lot of statues of Mary, right? So it's understandable in that sense. But no, you're exactly right, of course, that the difference is between reverence or devotion and worship. And we trust that she will bring us to the Father and to Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But, I mean, on the Feast of Guadalupe, I am all in.
She's awesome. Guadalupe is awesome.
Do Catholics pray to the saints? Now, I feel like I just covered this. See, I'm imagining ahead of time. So good at this. we just talked about that. I think in the sense of Mary, there's a devotion, there's modeling, there's also an asking of intercession, right? So the understanding of saints are people that are in heaven, have a very close relationship with Christ, and it's a very human thing. Like, if you need something, take a couple people that you know well, who know the person you need to ask something for. Yeah. That's just a human model of how we relate, and I think that can be a helpful point of prayer, right? Do you have to pray to the saints? No, you could pray directly to God or Jesus. It's just as fine, but I think it's a helpful model for people.
I totally agree. One of the things that the communion of saints helps me with is that it gives me another way to understand that I do not have to go to God alone.
All right. Do Catholics fast?
Yes. Yeah.
During Lent?
Yeah.
I mean, there's also devotional practices for different reasons, personal piety and other things, but during Lent you have 2 mandatory fasts on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. Mm-hmm. And then you have I think people sometimes distinguish between fasting and abstinence. So abstinence is where you refrain from eating meat on Fridays.
Yeah, and Eric, you make a great point, because there's a difference between the personal practices of fasting and these collective, these corporate, church-wide practices of fasting. And so those practices together, like on holy days, we take those on together so that we're all doing the same thing, experiencing something together as the church. But you can also do practices of fasting in commemoration of an event that's coming up, in anticipation and preparation for something.
I mean, a bodily reminder of the spirituality that you're pursuing. I think it can be an important tool. I always find it hilarious because I typically work in Catholic places, so there's a lot of hangry going on on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday with everybody I work with, because everybody's fasting.
Yep.
Do Catholics do yoga? I know a few. I'm just not flexible, so I don't.
Speaking of an embodied spirituality, this is definitely something that's very present. Now, I guess we shouldn't just blow right past the question. And I think the concern comes from this, that these Hindu practices, or these practices, yoga practices, arose within a particular context and were associated with a religion that is not our religion. It's a spiritual discipline that is not our spiritual discipline. But the question becomes, can those practices be infused with something other than their point of origin? Now, we want to be careful because it can be very easy to just kind of co-opt this other thing and take it to say, oh, now this belongs to us. We're going to fill it with whatever we want. Now, we want to be gentle and careful about that.
You'll hear frequently from Jesuits this point of finding God in all things, so that there's this sense of we do not need to be afraid of these other practices, and we can look for what is good and what can be helpful within this tradition. What can we take from that? And I think that's a lot of finding God in all things. We don't have to be afraid of these other practices.
I totally agree.
Last question: Do Catholics believe in purgatory?
Yes.
Yes. So we've talked about this, I think, on other episodes with a different question. But I think this comes up a lot for people. What does purgatory mean? I think it's a recognition that sometimes, even at the point of death, there's probably some work that needs to be done to allow you to be fully entering into a relationship with God, to see God as God truly is. And so there's this concept of a place of purification as you prepare, to be completely in relationship with God, because that's the goal of our lives. I think it's a really hopeful.
I agree.
Thing to think about.
Well, and one of the key principle upon which we base this entire discussion is, what kind of God is God?
Yeah.
I'll say this: I am not interested in a God that is only interested in punishment. And that is not the God that Jesus reveals. It's just simply not there. Now, that does not mean there's not punishment. That's not what we're saying. It's not what I'm saying. But that is not what God wants. God wants union with us. That's what we want to enter into. So how can we understand this, idea of purgatory in that light? This way.
God wants us to want God.
I agree with that too.
Want you to want me.
Now that that's in your head, we would like to thank you for watching another episode of Jesuit Autocomplete. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to catch all of our episodes and any other content there. For Father Eric Sundrup, I am Father Paddy Gilger. Thank you for joining us.